Hello, my sweet. We're back with Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. We're still on Chapter 6, The Noble and Most Ancient House of Black. Stand up straight, said Sirius impatiently. Now, what are you up to? Creature is cleaning, the elf repeated. Creature leaves to serve the noble House of Black. And it's getting blacker every day. It's filthy, said Sirius. Master always liked his little joke, said Creature, bowing again and continuing in an undertone. Master was a nasty, ungrateful swine who broke his mother's heart. My mother didn't have a heart, Creature, snapped Sirius. She kept herself alive out of pure spite. Creature bowed again as he spoke. Whatever Master says, he muttered furiously. Master is not fit to wipe slime from his mother's boots. Oh, my poor mistress, what would she say if she saw Creature serving him? How she hated him, what a disappointment he was. I asked you what you were up to, said Sirius coldly. Every time you show up pretending to be cleaning, you sneak something off to your room so we can't throw it out. Creature would never move anything from its proper place in Master's house, said the elf, then muttered very fast. Mistress would never forgive Creature if the tapestry was thrown out. 7 centuries it's been in the family. Creature must save it. Creature will not let Master and the blood traitors and the brats destroy it. I thought it might be that, said Sirius, casting a disdainful look at the opposite wall. She'll have put another permanent sticking charm on the back of it, I don't doubt, but if I can get rid of it, I certainly will. Now, go away, Creature. It seemed that Creature didn't dare disobey a direct order. Nevertheless, the look he gave Sirius as he shuffled out past him was full of deepest loathing, and he muttered all the way out of the room. Comes back from Azkaban, ordering Creature around. Oh, my poor mistress, what would she say if she saw the house now? Scum living in it, her treasures thrown out. She swore he was no son of hers, and he's back. They say he's a murderer too. Keep muttering, and I will be a murderer, said Sirius irritably, as he slammed the door shut on the elf. Sirius, he's not right in the head, Hermione pleaded. I don't think he realises we can hear him. Been alone too long, said Sirius, taking mad orders from my mother's portrait and talking to himself. But he was always a foul little... If you could just set him free, said Hermione hopefully. Maybe. We can't set him free. He knows too much about the Order, said Sirius curtly. And anyway, the shock would kill him. You suggest to him that he leaves the house. See how he takes it. Sirius walked across the room to where the tapestry Creature had been trying to protect hung the length of the wall. Harry and the others followed. The tapestry looked immensely old. It was faded and looked as though doxies had gnawed at it in places. Nevertheless, the golden thread with which it was embroidered still glinted brightly enough to show them a sprawling family tree dating back, as far as Harry could tell, to the Middle Ages. Large words at the very top of the tapestry read, The Noble and Most Ancient House of Black. Toujours pur. Toujours pur. Which is French. You're not on here, said Harry, after scanning the bottom of the tree closely. I used to be there, said Sirius, pointing at a small round charred hole in the tapestry, rather like a cigarette burn. My sweet old mother blasted me off after I ran away from home. Creature's quite fond of muttering the story under his breath. You ran away from home? When I was about 16, said Sirius. I'd had enough. Where did you go? Said Harry, staring at him. Your dad's place, said Sirius. Your grandparents were really good about it. They sort of adopted me as a second son. Yeah, I camped out at your dad's in the school holidays. And when I was 17, I got a place of my own. My uncle Alfred left me a decent bit of gold. He's been wiped off here too, that's probably why. Anyway, after that I looked after myself. I was always welcome at Mr. and Mrs. Potter's for Sunday lunch, though. But why did you leave? Sirius smiled bitterly and ran his fingers through his long, unkempt hair. Because I hated the whole lot of them. My parents, with their pure-blood mania, convinced that to be a black you had to be practically royal. My idiot brother, soft enough to believe them. That's him. Sirius jabbed a finger at the very bottom of the tree, at the name Regulus Black. A year of death, some 15 years previously, followed the date of birth. He was younger than me, said Sirius, and a much better son, as I was constantly reminded. But he died, said Harry. Yeah, said Sirius, stupid idiot. He joined the Death Eaters. You're kidding. "Come on, Harry, haven't you seen enough of this house to tell what kind of wizards my family were?" said Sirius testily. Were your parents Death Eaters as well?" "No, no, but believe me, they thought Voldemort had the right idea. They were all for the purification of the wizarding race, getting rid of Muggleborns and having purebloods in charge. They weren't alone either. There were quite a few people before Voldemort showed his true colours who thought that he had the right idea about things. They got cold feet when they saw what he was prepared to do to get power, though. But I bet my parents thought Regulus was a right little hero for joining at first." "Was he killed by an owl?" Harry asked tentatively. "Oh, no," said Sirius. "No, he was murdered by Voldemort. Or on Voldemort's orders, more likely. I doubt Regulus was ever important enough to be killed by Voldemort in person. From what I found out after he died, he got in so far, then panicked about what he was being asked to do and tried to back out. Well, you don't just hand in your resignation to Voldemort. It's a lifetime of service, or death." "Lunch!" said Mrs. Weasley's voice. She was holding her wand high in front of her, balancing a huge tray loaded with sandwiches and cake on its tip. She was very red in the face and still looked angry. The others moved over to her, eager for some food, but Harry remained with Sirius, who bent closer to the tapestry. "I haven't looked at this for years. There's Phineas Nigellus. My great-great-grandfather, see? Least popular headmaster Hogwarts ever had. And Araminta Melliflua, a cousin of my mother's, tried to force through a ministry bill to make muggle hunting legal. Oh, and dear Aunt Elladora. She started the family tradition of beheading house elves when they got too old to carry their tea trays. Of course, any time the family produced someone halfway decent, they were disowned. I see Tonks isn't on here. Maybe that's why Creature won't take orders from her. He's supposed to do whatever anyone in the family asks him." "You and Tonks are related?" Harry asked, surprised. "Oh, yeah, her mother Andromeda was my favourite cousin," said Sirius, examining the tapestry closely. "No, Andromeda's not on here either, look." He pointed to another small, round burn mark between two names, Bellatrix and Narcissa. "Andromeda's sisters are still here because they made lovely, respectable, pure-blood marriages, but Andromeda married a Muggleborn, Ted Tonks, so, Sirius mind blasting the tapestry with a wand, and laughed sourly. Harry, however, didn't laugh. He was too busy staring at the names to the right of Andromeda's burn mark. A double line of gold embroidery linked Narcissa Black with Lucius Malfoy, and a single vertical gold line from their names led to the name Draco. "You're related to the Malfoys?" "The pureblood families are all interrelated," said Sirius. "If you're only going to let your sons and daughters marry purebloods, your choice is very limited. There are hardly any of us left. Molly and I are cousins by marriage, and Arthur's something like my second cousin once removed. But there's no point looking for them on here. If ever a family was a bunch of blood traitors, it's the Weasleys." But Harry was now looking at the name to the left of Andromeda's burn, Bellatrix Black, which was connected by a double line to Rodolphus Lestrange. "Lestrange," Harry said aloud. The name had stirred something in his memory. He knew it from somewhere, but for a moment he couldn't think where, though it gave him an odd creeping sensation in the pit of his stomach. "They're in Azkaban," said Sirius shortly. Harry looked at him curiously. "Bellatrix and her husband Rodolphus came in with Barry Crouch Jr., said Sirius, in the same brusque voice. "Rodolphus's brother Rabastan was there with them too." Then Harry remembered he had seen Bellatrix Lestrange inside Dumbledore's Pensieve, the strange device in which thoughts and memories could be stored. A tall, dark woman, with heavy-lidded eyes, who had stood at her trial and proclaimed her continuing allegiance to Lord Voldemort, her pride that she had tried to find him after his downfall, and her conviction that she would one day be rewarded for her loyalty. "You never said she was your—" "Does it matter if she's my cousin?" snapped Sirius. "As far as I'm concerned, they're not my family. She's certainly not my family. I haven't seen her since I was your age, unless you count a glimpse of her coming into Azkaban. Do you think I'm proud of having a relative like her?" "I'm sorry," said Harry quickly. "I didn't mean... I was just surprised, that's all." "It doesn't matter. Don't apologise," Sirius mumbled. He turned away from the tapestry, his hands deep in his pockets. "I don't like being back here," he said, staring across the drawing-room. "I never thought I'd be stuck in this house again." Harry understood completely. He knew how he would feel when he was grown up and thought he was free of the place forever, to return and live at number 4 Privet Drive. "It's ideal for headquarters, of course," Sirius said. "My father put every security measure known to a wizard kind on it when he lived here. It's unplottable, so muggles could never come and call." As if they would want to. "And now Dumbledore's added his protection, you'd be hard put to find a safer house anywhere. Dumbledore is a secret keeper for the Order, you know. Nobody can find headquarters unless he tells them personally where it is. That note Moody showed you last night, that was from Dumbledore." Sirius gave a short, bark-like laugh. "If my parents could see the use their house was being put to now, well, my mother's portrait should give you some idea." He scowled for a moment, then sighed. "I wouldn't mind if I could just get out occasionally and do something useful. I've asked Dumbledore whether I can escort you to your hearing. As Snuffles, obviously, so I can give you a bit of moral support. What do you think?" Harry felt as though his stomach had sunk through the dusty carpet. He hadn't thought about the hearing once since dinner the previous evening. In the excitement of being back with the people he liked best, and hearing everything that was going on, it had completely flown his mind. At Sirius's words, however, the crushing sense of dread returned to him. He stared at Hermione and the Weasleys, all tucking into their sandwiches, and thought how he would feel if they went back to Hogwarts without him. "Don't worry," Sirius said. Harry looked up and realised that Sirius had been watching him. "I'm sure they'll clear you. There's definitely something in the International Statute of Secrecy about being allowed to lose magic to save your own life." "But if they don't expel me," said Harry quietly, can I come back here and live with you?" Sirius smiled sadly. "We'll see. I'd feel a lot better about the hearing if I knew I didn't have to go back to the Dursleys." Harry pressed him. "They must be bad if you prefer this place," said Sirius gloomily. "Hurry up, you two, or there won't be any food left," Mrs. Weasley called. Sirius heaved another great sigh, cast a dark look at the tapestry, and then he and Harry went to join the others. Harry tried his best not to think about the hearing while they emptied the glass-fronted cabinets that afternoon. Fortunately for him, it was a job that required a lot of concentration, as many of the objects in there seemed very reluctant to leave their dusty shelves. Sirius sustained a bad bite from a silver snuff-box. Within seconds, his bitten hand had developed an unpleasant, crusty covering, like a tough brown glove. "It's okay," he said, examining the hand with interest before tapping it lightly with his wand and restoring its skin to normal. "Must be wart cat powder in there." He threw the box aside into the sack where they were depositing the debris from the cabinet. Harry saw George wrap his own hand carefully in a cloth moments later and sneak the box into his already doxy-filled pocket. Sorry about that. Harry saw George wrap his own hand carefully in a cloth moments later and sneak the box into his already doxy-filled pocket. They found an unpleasant-looking silver instrument, something like a many-legged pair of tweezers, which scuttled up Harry's arm like a spider when he picked it up and attempted to puncture his skin. Sirius seized it and smashed it with a heavy book entitled Nature's Nobility, a Wizarding Genealogy. There was a musical box that emitted a faintly sinister tinkling tune when wound, and they all found themselves becoming curiously weak and sleepy, until Ginny had the sense to slam the lid shut. A heavy locket that none of them could open, a number of ancient seals, and, in a dusty box, an order of Merlin first class that had been awarded to Sirius's grandfather for services to the ministry. "Means he gave them a lot of gold," said Sirius contemptuously, throwing the medal into the rubbish bag. Several times creatures sidled into the room and attempted to smuggle things away under his loincloths, muttering horrible curses every time they caught him at it. When Sirius wrestled a large golden ring bearing the black crest from his grip, creature actually burst into furious tears and left the room sobbing under his breath and calling Sirius names Harry had never heard before. "It was my father's," said Sirius, throwing the ring into the sack. "Creature wasn't quite as devoted to him as to my mother, but I still caught him snogging a pair of my father's old trousers last week." Mrs. Weasley kept them all working very hard over the next few days. The drawing room took 3 days to decontaminate. Finally, the only undesirable things left in it were the tapestry of the Black family tree, which resisted all their attempts to remove it from the wall, and the rattling writing desk. Moody hadn't dropped by headquarters yet, so they couldn't be sure what was inside it. They moved from the drawing room to a dining room on the ground floor, where they found spiders as large as saucers lurking in the dresser. One left the room hurriedly to make a cup of tea and didn't return for an hour and a half. The china, which bore the black crest and motto, was all thrown unceremoniously into a sack by Sirius, and the same fate met a set of old photographs in tarnished silver frames, all of whose occupants squealed shrilly as the glass covering them smashed. Snape might refer to their work as cleaning, but in Harry's opinion they were really waging war on the house, which was putting up a very good fight, aided and abetted by Creature. The house elf kept appearing wherever they were congregated, his muttering becoming more and more offensive as he attempted to remove anything he could from the rubbish sacks. Sirius went as far as to threaten him with clothes, but Creature fixed him with a watery stare and said, "Master must do as Master wishes," before turning away and muttering very loudly, "But Master will not turn Creature away, no, because Creature knows what they're up to, oh yes, and he is plotting against the Dark Lord, yes, with these mudbloods and traitors and scum." At which Sirius, ignoring Hermione's protests, seized Creature by the back of his loincloth and threw him bodily from the room. The doorbell rang several times a day, which was the cue for Sirius's mother to start shrieking again, and for Harry and the others to attempt to eavesdrop on the visitor, though they gleaned very little from the brief glimpses and snatches of conversation they were able to sneak before Mrs. Weasley recalled them to their tasks. Snape flitted in and out of the house several times more, though to Harry's relief they never came face to face. Harry also caught sight of his Transfiguration teacher, Professor McGonagall, looking very odd in a muggle dress and coat, and she also seemed too busy to linger. Sometimes, however, the visitors stayed to help. Tonks joined them for a memorable afternoon, in which they found a murderous old ghoul lurking in an upstairs toilet, and Lupin, who was staying in the house with Sirius, but who left it for long periods to do mysterious work for the Order, helped them repair a grandfather clock that had developed the unpleasant habit of shooting heavy bolts at passers-by. Mundungus redeemed himself slightly in Mrs. Weasley's eyes by rescuing Ron from an ancient set of purple robes that had tried to strangle him when he removed them from their wardrobe. Despite the fact that he was still sleeping badly, still having dreams about corridors and locked doors that made his scar prickle, Harry was managing to have fun for the first time all summer. As long as he was busy, he was happy. When the action abated, however, whenever he dropped his guard or lay exhausted in bed watching blurred shadows move across the ceiling, the thought of the looming ministry hearing returned to him. Fear jabbed at his insides like needles as he wondered what was going to happen to him if he was expelled. The idea was so terrible that he did not dare voice it aloud, not even to Ron and Hermione, who, though he often saw them, whispering together and casting anxious looks in his direction, followed his lead in not mentioning it. Sometimes he could have prevented his imagination showing him a faceless ministry official who was snapping his wand in two and ordering him back to the Dursleys. But he would not go. He was determined on that. He would come back here to Grimmauld Place and live with Sirius. He felt as though a brick had dropped into his stomach when Mrs. Weasley turned to him during dinner on Wednesday evening and said quietly, "I find your best clothes for tomorrow morning, Harry, and I want you to wash your hair tonight too. A good first impression can work wonders." Ron, Hermione, Fred, George and Ginny all stopped talking and looked over at him. Harry nodded and tried to keep eating his chop, but his mouth had become so dry he couldn't chew. "How am I getting there?" he asked Mrs. Weasley, trying to sound unconcerned. "Arthur's taking you to work with him," said Mrs. Weasley gently. Mr. Weasley smiled encouragingly at Harry across the table. "You can wait in my office until it's time for the hearing," he said. Harry looked over at Sirius, but before he could ask the question, Mrs. Weasley had answered it. "Professor Dumbledore doesn't think it's a good idea for Sirius to go with you, and I must say I think he's quite right," said Sirius through clenched teeth. Mrs. Weasley pursed her lips. "When did Dumbledore tell you that?" Harry said, staring at Sirius. "He came last night, when you were in bed," said Mrs. Weasley. Sirius stabbed moodily at a potato with his fork. Harry lowered his own eyes to the plate. He thought that Dumbledore had been in the thought that Dumbledore had been in the house on the eve of his hearing and had not asked to see him made him feel, if it were possible, even worse. And that's the end of today's chapter. Tomorrow, Chapter 7, The Ministry of Magic! Right, my love, I hope you sleep well. I hope you're going to be a good girl for Mummy. And I hope that you don't forget to like and subscribe. Mwah.